My name is Emma Clarke, and for the past 3 years I've been invisible. Not literally, of course, but in every way that matters when you work for someone like Adrian Blackwell. He's the kind of man who walks into a room and the temperature drops 5 degrees. The kind of man whose silence is more terrifying than his anger. The kind of man who has never, not once in 1,095 days, looked at me as anything more than a piece of office furniture that occasionally brings him coffee. I remember my first day at Blackwell Industries like it was yesterday. I was 22 years old, fresh out of business school with a degree that meant nothing without connections. My resume had been rejected by 47 companies before Blackwell Industries called. I thought it was a miracle. I wore my only professional suit, a navy blue number I'd bought at a discount store, and I walked into that gleaming tower of glass and steel thinking my life was about to change. I was right, but not in the way I'd imagined. Adrian Blackwell was 31 then, already a legend in the business world. He'd inherited his father's company at 25 and tripled its value in 6 years. Forbes called him the Ice King of Wall Street. Business Insider wrote that he had ice water in his veins instead of blood. Women threw themselves at him, men wanted to be him. And I was assigned to be his personal secretary. The first time I saw him, I understood why people were terrified. He stood at 6 feet 3 inches tall, with dark hair that he kept perfectly styled, sharp cheekbones that could cut glass, and eyes the color of a winter storm. But it wasn't his looks that made my hands shake as I introduced myself. It was the way he looked through me, as if I were transparent, as if I didn't exist at all. "Emma Clarke," he'd said, his voice deep and cold. "You come highly recommended by the agency. I have 3 rules. 1. I drink my coffee black, no sugar, no cream, at precisely 7:30 every morning. 2. When I'm in a meeting, you do not interrupt me unless the building is on fire. 3. Your personal life does not exist during work hours. Do you understand?" I'd nodded, my throat too tight to speak. "Good. Your desk is outside my office. I expect you here by 7 every morning. You leave when I leave. Your salary is $60,000 a year. Any questions?" I should have asked 1,000 things. About benefits, about overtime, about what exactly my duties would entail. Instead, I whispered, "No, sir." He turned away from me then, already dismissing me from his thoughts. Then get to work. That was 3 years ago. 3 years of arriving at 6:45 every morning to make sure his coffee was perfect. 3 years of staying until 9 or 10 at night, sometimes later, waiting for him to finish whatever deal he was closing. 3 years of canceling plans, missing birthdays, sacrificing every piece of my personal life on the altar of Adrian Blackwell's schedule. And in all that time, he never once asked me how I was. Never acknowledged a birthday or a holiday. Never said thank you. I was a machine to him. Something that performed tasks and required no maintenance beyond a paycheck every 2 weeks. The other secretaries pitied me. I could see it in their eyes when we'd pass in the hallways. "Poor Emma," they'd whisper, "stuck with the Ice King." Some of them had worked for him before me. None of them lasted more than 6 months. I'd lasted 3 years, and I wasn't sure if that made me strong or stupid. My apartment was a tiny studio in a neighborhood that real estate agents politely called emerging. It had a window that looked out onto a brick wall, a kitchen the size of a closet, and a bathroom where I could sit on the toilet and wash my hands in the sink at the same time. But it was mine, paid for with money I earned. And after growing up in foster care, bouncing from house to house, never belonging anywhere, having something that was mine mattered more than comfort. I didn't have family. The state had found me abandoned at a hospital when I was 3 days old, wrapped in a pink blanket with no note, no name. Nothing to indicate who I was or where I came from. They'd given me the name Emma because the nurse who found me had a daughter named Emma. Clarke because it was simple and unremarkable. I'd spent my childhood in the system, moving from foster home to foster home. Never quite fitting in, never quite wanted. By the time I aged out at 18, I'd learned to rely only on myself. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through community college, then transferred to a state university for my final 2 years. I graduated with honors and $60,000 in student debt. The job at Blackwell Industries was supposed to be my ticket to a better life. Funny how things work out. The day everything changed started like any other. I arrived at 6:45, made Adrian's coffee exactly the way he liked it, and set it on his desk at 7:29. He arrived at 7:30, as he did every single day, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. He didn't acknowledge me as he passed. He never did. I settled at my desk and began sorting through his emails, flagging the important ones, deleting the spam, drafting responses to the ones that didn't require his personal attention. At 8, his first meeting began. At 9:30, his second. At 11, I ordered his lunch from the restaurant he preferred, the one where a single entree cost $80. At noon, I brought it to him. He was on a phone call and waved me away without looking up. At 2 in the afternoon, everything fell apart. I was at my desk when I heard raised voices from inside Adrian's office. This wasn't unusual. Adrian raised his voice often, usually when someone had disappointed him, which was often. But then I heard a second voice, equally angry, and I recognized it as belonging to Marcus Chen, the company's chief financial officer. "You can't do this, Adrian," Marcus was shouting. "This merger will destroy us." "The merger will save us," Adrian replied, his voice cold and controlled. "The numbers don't lie, Marcus. The numbers are manipulated. I've been going through the files and something doesn't add up. If we go through with this, we'll be liable for enough." Adrian's voice cut through the air like a blade. "I've made my decision. The board has approved it. Your objections are noted and dismissed." There was a long silence. Then Marcus said quietly, "I can't be part of this. I won't." "Then you're fired." I heard footsteps, and then Marcus burst out of Adrian's office, his face red with anger. He looked at me, and for a moment I thought he might say something. Instead, he shook his head and walked away. Adrian appeared in his doorway. "Emma, get me Jonathan Price from legal, now." I picked up the phone, my hands shaking slightly. Something was wrong. I could feel it in the air, a tension that made my skin prickle. But I did as I was told. I always did as I was told. The rest of the day passed in a blur of phone calls and meetings. Adrian was in what I privately called his shark mode, moving from one task to another with ruthless efficiency, destroying anyone who got in his way. By 6 in the evening, 3 more executives had been fired. By 7, the entire office was buzzing with rumors. At 8, when most of the staff had gone home, Adrian called me into his office. I stood in front of his massive desk, my hands clasped in front of me, waiting. He was reading something on his computer screen, his face illuminated by the blue light. For a long moment, he didn't acknowledge me. Then, without looking up, he said, "Emma, I need you to do something for me." "Of course, sir. There's a file on Marcus Chen's computer. I need you to retrieve it." I blinked. "Sir, I don't have access to. I'm giving you access." He finally looked at me, and there was something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Something that made my stomach twist. "This is important, Emma. The future of this company depends on it." "What kind of file?" "Financial records. Marcus was working on an analysis of the merger. I need to see what he found. Something about this felt wrong." "Sir, if Marcus was fired, shouldn't IT retrieve his files through proper channels?" Adrian's jaw tightened. "Are you questioning me?" "No, sir, Then do as I ask." He turned back to his computer, dismissing me. "I need that file by tomorrow morning." I left his office with my heart pounding. In 3 years, Adrian had never asked me to do anything that felt even remotely questionable. He was demanding, yes. Cold, absolutely. But he'd always operated within the rules. Always maintained a strict ethical code. This felt different. That night, I lay in my narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. I thought about Marcus's face, the anger and fear I'd seen there. I thought about the 3 other executives who'd been fired. I thought about Adrian's eyes and the desperation I'd glimpsed beneath the ice. I thought about my $60,000 salary and my $60,000 debt and my tiny apartment with its view of a brick wall. And I thought about what would happen if I said no. The next morning, I arrived at work with dark circles under my eyes and a decision I wasn't sure I could live with. I decided to do what Adrian asked. Not because I was loyal to him, but because I was afraid. Afraid of losing my job, my apartment, my fragile stability. I'd been powerless my entire life. And I'd learned that powerless people don't get to have principles. But when I sat down at my computer and pulled up the access codes Adrian had sent me, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I stared at the screen for 10 minutes, my finger hovering over the enter key, unable to press it. Emma. I jumped, nearly knocking over my coffee. Adrian was standing in his doorway watching me with those cold gray eyes. Did you get the file? I was just about to. My office. Now. I followed him inside, my heart hammering against my ribs. He closed the door behind us and gestured to the chair across from his desk. I sat, my hands gripping the armrests. You didn't do it, he said. It wasn't a question. Sir, why? I looked down at my lap. It felt wrong. The silence that followed was so heavy I could barely breathe. Then Adrian laughed, a short, bitter sound that made me flinch. Wrong, he repeated. You've worked for me for 3 years, Emma. 3 years of doing everything I asked without question. And now when I need you most, you suddenly develop a conscience. I'm sorry, sir, but do you know what's at stake here? He leaned forward, his hands flat on the desk. This company employs 15,000 people. 15,000 families depend on the decisions I make. Marcus Chen was going to destroy all of that because he didn't understand the bigger picture. Then why not explain it to him? Because some people can't see beyond their own limited perspective. His voice rose, and I shrank back in my chair. Because sometimes, to save something, you have to make choices that look wrong from the outside but are necessary from the inside. I'd never seen him like this. In 3 years, I'd seen him angry, frustrated, cold, dismissive. But I'd never seen him desperate, and Adrian Blackwell was desperate. Sir, I said quietly, if what you're doing is right, why do you need to hide it? He stared at me for a long moment. Then he sat back in his chair and ran a hand through his hair. A gesture so uncharacteristically vulnerable that it shocked me. Get out, he said, his voice flat. Sir, get out of my office. You're fired. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? You heard me. Pack your things and leave. I'll have HR send you your final paycheck. I stood on shaking legs. Mr. Blackwell, please. I said get out. I stumbled out of his office. My vision blurring with tears, I refused to let fall. Not here, not in front of everyone. I grabbed my purse from my desk drawer, ignoring the curious stares of the other secretaries, and walked to the elevator on legs that felt like they might give out at any moment. It wasn't until I was outside, standing on the sidewalk in the cold March wind, that I let myself cry. 3 years. 3 years of my life. Sacrificed for a man who'd just thrown me away like garbage. 3 years of missed opportunities, lost friendships, abandoned dreams. And for what? I was 25 years old, unemployed, and alone. Again. I went back to my apartment and spent the rest of the day in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what to do next. I had about $3,000 in savings, enough for maybe 2 months of rent and food if I was careful. I'd have to start looking for a new job immediately, but who would hire me? I'd spent 3 years as a secretary. I had no other experience, no connections, no references. Adrian certainly wasn't going to give me a glowing recommendation. That night, I was heating up a cup of instant noodles when someone knocked on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. I never had visitors. Cautiously, I looked through the peephole and saw a man in an expensive suit standing in my dingy hallway, looking completely out of place. Who is it? I called through the door. Miss Clarke. My name is Richard Sterling. I'm an attorney. I need to speak with you about a matter of great importance. I don't need a lawyer. Miss Clarke, please. This concerns your family. I froze. I don't have a family. That's not entirely accurate. Please, may I come in? I promise this will only take a few minutes. Against my better judgment, I opened the door. Richard Sterling was in his 50s. With silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, he looked at my tiny apartment with barely concealed surprise, then at me with something that might have been pity. May I sit? He asked, gesturing to my only chair. I guess. He sat, pulling a leather briefcase onto his lap. Miss Clarke, what I'm about to tell you may come as a shock. I'd been searching for you for a very long time. Searching for me. Why? He pulled out a folder and opened it, revealing a photograph of a baby. Do you recognize this? I looked at the photo. It showed an infant wrapped in a pink blanket. The same pink blanket the hospital had given me when I was found. That's me. The hospital took that picture. Yes. But what you don't know is that this blanket wasn't just any blanket. It was custom made by a very exclusive boutique in Paris. Only 50 were ever produced, and each one was numbered. This one was number 17. My heart started to pound. I don't understand. Number 17 was purchased 25 years ago by a woman named Victoria Ashford. She bought it for her daughter who was born that same year. A daughter who was kidnapped from the hospital 3 days after her birth. The room seemed to tilt. What are you saying? I'm saying that you, Emma Clarke, are actually Evelyn Ashford. You're the daughter of Victoria and James Ashford. You're the heiress to the Ashford fortune. I couldn't breathe. This had to be a joke. A scam. That's impossible. I was abandoned. The police investigated. They never found the kidnapper was a nurse at the hospital. She was caught years later for a different crime and confessed on her deathbed. She said she left you at a different hospital, wrapped in the original blanket. The police reopened the case, but by then, you'd been moved through so many foster homes that the trail had gone cold. Your parents never stopped looking for you, Miss Clarke. Never. My parents, I whispered. They're alive. Richard's expression softened. Your mother is. Your father passed away 2 years ago. But Victoria has been searching for you every day since you were taken. And now, finally, we found you. I sat down on my bed, my legs giving out. This can't be real. I have DNA evidence if you'd like to see it. We obtained a sample from a coffee cup you discarded last week. I know that sounds invasive, but we had to be sure before we approached you. The results are conclusive. You are Evelyn Ashford. I don't. I can't. My mind was spinning. Why now? Why did you find me now? Your mother hired a new investigative team 6 months ago. They used advanced genetic genealogy techniques, the same ones used to solve cold cases. It took time, but they traced you through the foster system. He pulled out another photograph. This one showing a beautiful woman with dark hair and eyes the same shade as mine. She was standing in front of a massive estate, smiling at the camera. This is your mother. She's waiting to meet you. I stared at the photograph, at this stranger who was supposedly my mother, and felt nothing. No recognition, no connection, just a vast, empty confusion. Miss Clarke. Evelyn, I know this is overwhelming, but your mother would very much like to see you. She's asked me to bring you to the family estate if you're willing. The family estate, I repeated numbly. The Ashford estate in Connecticut. It's about 2 hours from here. I have a car waiting downstairs. Now. You want me to go now? Only if you're comfortable. But Miss Clarke, there's something else you should know. The Ashford family is. Well, they're one of the wealthiest families in the country. Your mother is the CEO of Ashford Global, a multinational corporation with holdings in technology, real estate, and finance. As her only child, you're the heir to everything. I thought about my tiny apartment, my instant noodles, my $3,000 in savings. I thought about Adrian Blackwell firing me, about being alone and powerless and invisible. Okay, I heard myself say. I'll go. The car Richard had waiting wasn't just a car. It was a Rolls-Royce, with leather seats softer than my bed and the interior that smelled like money. I sat in the back, still wearing my cheap jeans and discount store sweater, feeling like an imposter. As we drove out of the city and into the countryside, Richard explained more about the Ashford family. They'd made their fortune in shipping in the 1800s, then diversified into other industries. My father, James Ashford, had been a brilliant businessman who'd expanded the company into technology. My mother, Victoria, had taken over after his death and had proven to be even more successful. Your mother is a remarkable woman, Richard said. Strong, intelligent, and absolutely devoted to finding you. Your disappearance nearly destroyed her. She and your father spent millions on the search. They never gave up hope. I didn't know what to say to that. I'd spent my whole life believing I was unwanted, that whoever had given birth to me had thrown me away like trash. And now I was supposed to believe that I'd been loved, that I'd been searched for. It was too much. The Ashford estate appeared as we crested a hill, and I actually gasped. It wasn't a house. It was a palace. A massive stone mansion with dozens of windows, surrounded by perfectly manicured gardens and a circular driveway with a fountain in the center. It looked like something out of a movie. "This is where I grew up," I whispered. "This is where you were born," Richard corrected gently. "You only lived here for 3 days before you were taken." The car stopped in front of the main entrance, and a woman appeared at the top of the steps. She was the woman from the photograph, but older, more fragile. She wore an elegant dress and pearls, but her hands were shaking as she gripped the railing. "Evelyn," she breathed and started down the steps. I got out of the car slowly, my legs unsteady. Victoria Ashford stopped a few feet away from me, her eyes filling with tears as she took in every detail of my face. "You have your father's eyes," she whispered, "and my nose. Oh, Evelyn, I've dreamed of this moment for 25 years. She reached out as if to touch me, then stopped, her hand hovering in the air between us. "May I?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. She pulled me into a hug, and I stood there stiffly, not knowing what to do with my arms. She smelled like expensive perfume and something else, something that might have been familiar if I'd had any memories of her. "I'm sorry," she said, pulling back and wiping her eyes. "I'm overwhelming you. Please come inside. We have so much to talk about." The inside of the mansion was even more impressive than the outside. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, artwork that probably belonged in museums. Victoria led me to a sitting room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens and gestured for me to sit on a sofa that looked like it cost more than a car. A woman in a uniform appeared with tea and small cakes on a silver tray. I stared at it, not sure what to do. I'd never had tea served to me on a silver tray before. "I know this must be incredibly strange for you," Victoria said, sitting across from me. "Richard told me about your life, about the foster homes. I can't imagine what you've been through." "It wasn't that bad," I said automatically, the lie I'd told myself for years. "Emma, may I call you Emma, or would you prefer Evelyn?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I've been Emma my whole life. Evelyn feels like someone else, then Emma it is for now." She smiled, but it was sad. "I want you to know that I never stopped looking for you, not for a single day. Your father and I, we hired investigators. We worked with the police. We offered rewards. When your father died, his last words were about you. He made me promise I'd keep searching." Guilt twisted in my stomach. "I'm sorry. About your husband." "Our husband?" she corrected gently. "He was your father, Emma, and he loved you so much. We both did. We do." I didn't know what to say to that. Love was a concept I'd never really understood. The foster families I'd lived with had provided food and shelter, but love, that was something I'd only read about in books. "Richard said you're the CEO of Ashford Global," I said, changing the subject. "Yes. After your father died, I took over the company. It's been challenging, but it's also been a way to honor his memory. And to build something for you for when we found you." "For me?" "You're my heir, Emma. Everything I have, everything the company has built, it's all yours. Or it will be, when you're ready." I thought about my $3,000 in savings and almost laughed. "I don't know anything about running a company. You'll learn. You're Ashford. It's in your blood." She leaned forward. "But we don't have to talk about business right now. I want to know about you. Tell me about your life. What do you do? What do you love? What are your dreams?" What were my dreams? I'd spent so long just trying to survive that I'd never really thought about it. I was working as a secretary at Blackwell Industries. Victoria's expression changed, hardening into something cold and sharp. "Blackwell Industries. Adrian Blackwell's company. Yes. Do you know him?" "Know him?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Adrian Blackwell is my greatest rival. Our companies have been competing for decades. His father and your father hated each other, and Adrian has spent the last 6 years trying to destroy everything I've built. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. What? The Blackwells and the Ashfords have been enemies for 3 generations. It started with a business deal gone wrong in the 1950s and has escalated ever since. Adrian's father tried to buy out our company when your father died. I fought him off, but it cost us dearly. And now Adrian is trying to finish what his father started. I didn't know, I whispered. He never mentioned. I was just his secretary. He barely knew I existed. Victoria's eyes narrowed. You worked for him. For how long? 3 years. But I was fired yesterday. Why? I hesitated, then told her everything. About Marcus Chen, about the file Adrian wanted me to steal, about my refusal and the consequences. Victoria listened in silence, her expression growing darker with every word. When I finished, she stood and walked to the window, her back to me. That bastard, she said quietly. He's planning something big, and he tried to use you to do it. I don't think he knew who I was. I mean, I didn't even know who I was. No, he couldn't have known. If he'd known you were my daughter, he never would have hired you in the first place. She turned back to me. Emma, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Did you take the file? No, that's why he fired me. Good. She came back and sat down, taking my hands in hers. Listen to me carefully. Adrian Blackwell is a dangerous man. He's brilliant, ruthless, and he will stop at nothing to win. Whatever he's planning, it's going to hurt a lot of people. And now that you're back, now that you're publicly acknowledged as my daughter, he's going to see you as a target. Fear prickled down my spine. A target, not physically. Adrian isn't violent, but he'll try to use you against me. He'll try to manipulate you, to turn you against me, to get information about our company. You need to stay away from him. I thought about Adrian's cold gray eyes, his dismissive tone, the way he'd fired me without a second thought. That won't be a problem. I never want to see him again. Victoria smiled and squeezed my hands. Good. Now, let's talk about your future. I want you to move in here with me. This is your home, Emma. It always has been. Move in. I don't know if... Please. I've missed 25 years of your life. Let me have the chance to know you now. And besides, you said you were fired. You need a place to stay, don't you? She had a point. And the thought of going back to my tiny apartment, to my instant noodles and my view of a brick wall, after seeing this place. I was only human. Okay, I said. I'll stay. For a while at least. Victoria's smile was radiant. Wonderful. I'll have Richard arrange to have your things brought here. And tomorrow we'll go shopping. You'll need a new wardrobe. Emma, you're an Ashford now. You'll be attending galas, business dinners, charity events. You'll need clothes appropriate for your station. My station. 24 hours ago, I'd been a fired secretary with $3,000 to my name. Now I had a station. The next 3 months passed in a blur of transformation. Victoria was true to her word about the shopping. We spent an entire week going to boutiques and designers, places where a single dress cost more than I used to make in a month. I felt like Julia Roberts in Pretty Woman. Except this wasn't a movie, and there was no richer gear waiting to sweep me off my feet. Victoria also hired tutors. I had lessons in etiquette, in business, in the history of Ashford Global. I learned which fort to use at formal dinners, how to make small talk with billionaires, how to read a financial statement. It was exhausting and exhilarating and terrifying all at once. But the hardest part was learning to be a daughter. Victoria tried so hard to connect with me, to make up for lost time. She wanted to know everything about me, wanted to share everything about herself. She showed me photo albums from before I was born, told me stories about my father, tried to create a sense of family history that I'd never had. And I tried, I really did. But there was a wall inside me, built from 25 years of not belonging anywhere, and I didn't know how to tear it down. I called her Victoria, not Mom. I slept in the guest room. Not in the bedroom she'd kept ready for me all these years. The nursery she'd never been able to bring herself to change. I was polite, grateful, but distant. I could see it hurt her, but I didn't know how to be different. 3 months after I moved into the Ashford estate, Victoria announced that it was time for me to make my public debut. "There's a charity gala next week," she said over breakfast. "It's one of the biggest events of the year. Everyone who matters will be there. I want to introduce you to society as my daughter." My stomach dropped. "Do I have to? Emma, you can't hide forever. You're an Ashford. People need to know you exist. What if I mess up? What if I say the wrong thing or use the wrong fork or—" "You won't. You've been training for this, and I'll be right there with you." She reached across the table and took my hand. "I know you're scared, but you're stronger than you think. You survived 25 years on your own. You can survive one party." The night of the gala, I stood in front of the mirror in my room, barely recognizing myself. The woman looking back at me wore a midnight blue gown that hugged her curves and sparkled with tiny crystals. Her hair was swept up in an elegant style, her makeup was flawless, and she wore diamond earrings that cost more than a house. She looked like she belonged in this world. I just wished I felt like I did. "You look beautiful," Victoria said from the doorway. She was wearing a silver gown and a necklace of sapphires that had belonged to her grandmother. "Your father would be so proud." "I'm terrified," I admitted. "I know. But remember, you're not alone. I'm with you." She held out her hand, ready. I took a deep breath and took her hand, ready. The gala was held at the Grand Plaza Hotel in Manhattan, in a ballroom that looked like something out of a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting rainbow light across the marble floors. Women in designer gowns and men in tuxedos mingled, drinking champagne and laughing. A string quartet played in the corner. I felt like I'd stepped into a different world, which I supposed I had. Victoria led me through the crowd, introducing me to what felt like hundreds of people. CEOs, politicians, celebrities, socialites. Everyone wanted to meet the long-lost Ashford heiress. They shook my hand, kissed my cheeks, told me how wonderful it was that I'd been found. Some of them seemed genuine. Others looked at me like I was a curiosity, a scandal, something to gossip about over brunch. I smiled until my face hurt and made small talk, until my brain felt numb. And then across the room I saw him, Adrian Blackwell. He was standing near the bar, talking to a group of men in tuxedos. He looked exactly the same as he had 3 months ago. Same perfect hair, same sharp suit, same cold expression. But seeing him here, in this context, I realized something I'd never noticed before. He looked tired. There were shadows under his eyes, and his smile, when he laughed at something one of the men said, didn't reach his eyes. As if sensing my gaze, he looked up. Our eyes met across the room. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then his expression changed, cycling through surprise, confusion, and finally, recognition. He said something to the men he was with and started walking toward me. "Emma," Victoria said urgently, following my gaze. "We should go." But it was too late. Adrian was already standing in front of us, his gray eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made my breath catch. "Emma Clarke," he said slowly. "Or should I say Evelyn Ashford?" "Mr. Blackwell," Victoria said coldly, stepping slightly in front of me. "How unexpected to see you here, Mrs. Ashford." Adrian's voice was equally cold, but his eyes never left my face. "I didn't realize you'd be bringing your daughter tonight." The way he said daughter made it sound like an accusation. "Emma has every right to be here," Victoria said. "More right than some people." "I'm sure she does." Adrian finally looked at Victoria, and the temperature seemed to drop another 10 degrees. I was just surprised. The last time I saw Miss Clarke, she was my secretary. Now she's an heiress. Quite the promotion. "I was always an heiress," I said, finding my voice. "I just didn't know it." His gaze snapped back to me. "Convenient timing, though. You refuse to help me with a crucial matter, get fired, and suddenly discover you're the daughter of my biggest rival. One might think it was planned. Are you suggesting I knew?" Anger flared in my chest, burning away the nervousness. Are you suggesting I spent 3 years making your coffee and taking your abuse as some kind of long con? Emma, Victoria said warningly, but I was done being quiet. Done being invisible. I worked for you for 3 years, Mr. Blackwell. 3 years of arriving early and staying late. 3 years of canceling plans and missing holidays. 3 years of being treated like I didn't exist. And you have the audacity to stand here and suggest I was spying on you. Something flickered in Adrian's eyes. I never treated you poorly. You never treated me at all. I was furniture to you. A coffee machine with legs. You didn't even know my birthday. It's August 14th, he said quietly. I stopped, shocked. What? Your birthday. It's August 14th. You were born at 3:27 in the morning at Mercy General Hospital. You like your coffee with 2 sugars and cream? Even though you always made mine black. You're allergic to shellfish. You bite your lip when you're nervous. And you have a small scar on your left hand from when you burned yourself on my coffee maker in your first week. I stared at him, unable to speak. He'd noticed. All this time I thought I was invisible to him, but he'd noticed. Adrian, a woman's voice called from across the room. A stunning blonde in a red dress was waving at him. Come here, darling. Adrian's jaw tightened. Excuse me, he said stiffly, and walked away. I watched him go, my heart pounding in confusion. Who was that woman? I asked. Melissa Crawford, Victoria said with distaste. She's been trying to sink her claws into Adrian for years. Her father owns Crawford Industries. A marriage between them would create a very powerful alliance. Are they engaged? Not yet, but it's only a matter of time. Adrian needs the Crawford connection, and Melissa wants the Blackwell name. Victoria took my arm. Come, let's get some air. We stepped out onto the balcony, where the cool night air helped clear my head. Below us, the city sparkled with lights. I'm sorry, I said. I shouldn't have engaged with him. Don't apologize. You stood up for yourself. I'm proud of you. Victoria smiled. Though I have to admit, I've never seen Adrian Blackwell look so rattled. He remembered my birthday, I said softly. He said he never treated me poorly, but he remembered my birthday. Emma. Victoria's voice was gentle but firm. Whatever you think you saw in there, whatever you think Adrian Blackwell feels, you need to forget it. He's the enemy. He's been trying to destroy our company for years. And now that he knows who you are, he'll try to use you. Use me how? I don't know yet. But Adrian is brilliant at finding people's weaknesses and exploiting them. Don't let him find yours. I nodded. I couldn't stop thinking about the look in Adrian's eyes when he'd recited all those details about me. It hadn't been cold. It had been something else. Something I didn't have a name for. The next morning, I woke to find Victoria already gone. A note on the breakfast table said she'd had to go to the office for an emergency meeting. I ate alone, then wandered through the massive house feeling lost. I'd been living here for 3 months, but it still didn't feel like home. It was too big, too perfect, too much like a museum. I missed my tiny apartment sometimes, missed the simplicity of it. Here I had everything I could possibly want, but I felt more alone than ever. I was in the library, trying to read a book on corporate finance that made my eyes glaze over, when one of the staff members found me. Miss Ashford, there's someone here to see you. Who? He says his name is Adrian Blackwell. My heart jumped. Tell him I'm not available. I already did, miss. He says he'll wait. Of course he would. Fine. Show him to the sitting room. I'll be there in a minute. I took my time, checking my appearance in the mirror, trying to calm my racing heart. I was wearing jeans and a sweater, my hair in a ponytail, no makeup. I looked nothing like the polished heiress from last night. Good. Let him see the real me. Adrian was standing by the window when I entered, his hands in his pockets, looking out at the gardens. He turned when he heard me, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. You shouldn't be here, I said finally. I know. Your mother would probably have me shot if she knew. Then why are you here? He walked toward me, and I forced myself not to step back. I came to apologize. That was the last thing I'd expected. Apologize. For last night, for what I implied. You're right. You worked for me for 3 years, and I treated you like you were invisible. That was wrong. Why, the question burst out of me. Why did you treat me that way? If you noticed all those things about me, if you knew my birthday and my coffee order and my scar, why did you act like I didn't exist? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, because it was easier. Easier than what? Than admitting that I noticed you. Then admitting that every morning I looked forward to seeing you at your desk. Then admitting that I stayed late at the office not because I had work to do, but because I didn't want to go home to an empty apartment. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I'd never seen him make before. You were my secretary, Emma. There were rules. Boundaries. I couldn't let myself feel anything for you. I couldn't breathe. You felt something for me. I felt everything for you. His voice was rough. For 3 years I watched you. I noticed everything. The way you hummed when you thought no one was listening. The way you always brought extra lunch to share with the other secretaries. The way you stayed late without complaining, even when I knew you had plans. You were kind and patient and good. And I was terrified that if I acknowledged it, if I let myself get close to you, I'd ruin you the way I ruin everything I touch. So you pushed me away. So I pushed you away. You took another step closer. And then I asked you to do something unethical, and you refused. And I fired you. Because I was angry and scared, and I didn't know how to handle the fact that you were the first person in years who'd stood up to me, who'd chosen principles over self-preservation. You fired me because I had principles. I fired you because you made me feel things I didn't want to feel. And then I spent 3 months trying to forget you. Trying to convince myself that you were just a secretary, that you didn't matter. And then I saw you last night, and I realized that I'd lost you twice. Once when I fired you, and again when I found out who you really were. Why does who I am matter? Because you're Victoria Ashford's daughter. Because our families are enemies. Because any relationship between us would be impossible. We don't have a relationship, I pointed out. Don't we? He was close enough now that I could see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes. Emma, I know I have no right to ask this. I know I treated you terribly. I know your mother would kill me if she knew I was here. But I need to know. Is there any chance, any possibility that you might feel something for me too? I should have said no. I should have told him to leave and never come back. I should have remembered that he was the enemy, that he'd fired me, that he'd spent 3 years treating me like I was nothing. But I remembered the way my heart had jumped when I saw him last night. I remembered the way I'd always felt a little thrill when he'd walked past my desk, even though he never looked at me. I remembered 3 years of secret, shameful attraction to a man who barely knew I existed. I don't know, I whispered. I don't know what I feel. Then let me help you figure it out. He reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, his fingers lingering on my cheek. Have dinner with me, one dinner. If you decide you hate me, I'll never bother you again. My mother doesn't have to know. Emma, I'm not asking you to betray your family. I'm just asking for a chance to show you that I'm not the monster you think I am. I don't think you're a monster. Then what do you think I am? I looked up at him, at this man who dominated my life for 3 years, who'd fired me and hurt me and apparently noticed everything about me while pretending I didn't exist. I think you're complicated, I said finally. I think you're brilliant and cold and lonely. I think you push people away because you're afraid of letting them in. And I think you're asking me to dinner because you want something from me, even if you don't know what it is yet. He smiled, a real smile that transformed his face. See, you already know me better than anyone else does. That's not an answer. The answer is yes. I want something from you. I want a chance. That's all. Just a chance. I knew I should say no. I knew this was a terrible idea. But I'd spent my whole life being careful, being invisible, playing it safe. And where had it gotten me? Alone and afraid and always on the outside looking in. Maybe it was time to take a risk. One dinner, I said. But not anywhere public. If my mother finds out I know a place. Quiet, private, excellent food. I'll pick you up tomorrow night at 7. I'll meet you there. Give me the address. He pulled out his phone and sent me a text. "Tomorrow at 7. Don't stand me up, Emma Clarke. It's Emma Ashford now. Is it?" He looked at me intently. "Because you don't seem like an Ashford to me. You seem like Emma, just Emma. The woman who made my coffee and organized my life and refused to compromise her principles even when it cost her everything. That woman doesn't exist anymore, doesn't she?" He reached out and took my hand, his thumb brushing over the small scar on my palm. "I think she's still in there. I think she's just wearing a prettier dress." Then he let go of my hand and walked toward the door. At the threshold, he turned back. "Emma, for what it's worth, I'm sorry. For all of it, you deserved better than the way I treated you." "Yes," I said quietly, "I did." After he left, I stood in the sitting room for a long time, my hand still tingling where he touched it, my mind spinning with confusion and fear and something that might have been hope. What was I doing? Adrian Blackwell was my mother's enemy. He'd fired me. He'd treated me like I was nothing for 3 years. And now he was asking me to dinner, and I'd said yes. I was either very brave or very stupid, possibly both. That night, Victoria came home late, looking exhausted. We had dinner together in the formal dining room. Just the two of us at a table that could seat 20. "How was your day?" she asked. "Quiet. I read, walked around the gardens." "You should come to the office with me tomorrow. Start learning the business." "Maybe next week," I said, pushing food around my plate. Victoria set down her fork and looked at me. "Emma, is everything all right? You seem distracted." "I'm fine, just tired." She didn't look convinced, but she didn't push. "Well, get some rest. We have a busy week ahead. There's a board meeting on Thursday, and I want you there. It's time for the board to meet you officially." That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about Adrian, about his gray eyes and his rare smile and the way he'd remembered my birthday, about the way he'd said he felt everything for me. Was it true? Or was Victoria right? Was he just trying to use me? I didn't know. But tomorrow night I was going to find out. The next evening, I told Victoria I was meeting an old friend from college for dinner. The line tasted bitter on my tongue, but I told myself it was necessary. Just one dinner, just to see if there was anything real between Adrian and me, or if it was all in my head. I wore a simple black dress, nothing too fancy, and took a cab to the address Adrian had given me. It was a small Italian restaurant in a quiet neighborhood, the kind of place that didn't advertise and didn't need to. Inside it was warm and intimate, with only a dozen tables and soft music playing. Adrian was already there, sitting at a corner table. He stood when he saw me, and I noticed he wasn't wearing a suit, just dark jeans and a gray sweater that matched his eyes. He looked younger, more relaxed, more human. "You came," he said, and I heard relief in his voice. I said I would. I wasn't sure you'd actually go through with it. He pulled out my chair, and I sat, hyper-aware of his proximity. "Thank you for giving me this chance." A waiter appeared with menus and wine, and for a few minutes, we busied ourselves with ordering. When we were alone again, an awkward silence fell between us. "So," I said finally, "you wanted to show me you're not a monster. Here's your chance." Adrian smiled slightly. "No pressure then. You're the one who asked for this." "I did." He leaned back in his chair, studying me. "Where should I start? My tragic childhood, my complicated relationship with my father, my crippling fear of intimacy. Are those all true?" "Unfortunately, yes." He took a sip of wine. "My father was a brilliant businessman and a terrible parent. He believed that showing emotion was weakness, that love was a liability. He raised me to be a perfect heir to the Blackwell empire, cold, calculating, ruthless, and I became exactly what he wanted me to be. Until he died 5 years ago. And I realized I'd spent my entire life trying to please a man who was never going to be pleased, who was never going to tell me he was proud of me or that he loved me. And by then, I didn't know how to be anything else." There was pain in his voice, raw and real. "I'm sorry," I said softly. "Don't be. I'm not telling you this to make you feel sorry for me. I'm telling you because I want you to understand why I am the way I am, why I pushed you away. I didn't know how to let you in, Emma. I still don't. But I want to learn. The waiter brought our food, and we ate in silence for a while. The pasta was delicious, but I barely tasted it. I was too focused on Adrian, on the way the candlelight played across his face, on the vulnerability I'd never seen before. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Anything." "That day you asked me to get Marcus Chen's file. What was that about? What were you planning?" Adrian set down his fork. "I was planning to save my company. Marcus was right. The merger I was pursuing was risky. But it was also necessary. Blackwell Industries was hemorrhaging money. We'd made some bad investments and we were on the verge of collapse. The merger was our only chance. So why did you need his file?" "Because Marcus had found something. Some detail in the financials that he thought made the merger illegal. I needed to know what it was so I could address it before the board meeting. But I handled it badly. I should have talked to Marcus, should have explained the situation. Instead, I panicked and asked you to steal the file. And when I refused, I was angry. At you, at Marcus, at myself. So I fired you. It was petty and cruel. And I regretted it the moment you walked out of my office." "Did you go through with the merger?" "No. After you left, I actually read Marcus's analysis. He was right. The merger would have saved us in the short term, but destroyed us in the long term. So I found another way. It took 3 months and nearly killed me, but I restructured the company, cut costs, and found new investors. We're stable now. Not thriving, but stable. Because I refused to help you. Because you refused to help me do the wrong thing. You saved me from myself, Emma, even if you didn't know it." I didn't know what to say to that. We finished our meal, and Adrian ordered dessert, a chocolate cake that we shared. It felt strangely intimate, eating from the same plate, our forks occasionally touching. "Tell me about your life," Adrian said, "the real story. Not the sanitized version you tell at parties." So I did. I told him about the foster homes, about never belonging, about working 3 jobs to put myself through school. I told him about my tiny apartment and my instant noodles and my view of a brick wall. I told him things I'd never told anyone, not even Victoria, and he listened. Really listened, his eyes never leaving my face, his expression intent. "You're the strongest person I've ever met," he said when I finished. "I'm not strong, I'm just stubborn. I'm same thing." He reached across the table and took my hand. "Emma, I know this is complicated. I know our families are enemies. I know I have no right to ask anything of you. But I need you to know that what I feel for you is real. It's not a game, it's not a strategy. It's just real." My heart was pounding. "What do you want from me, Adrian?" "I want a chance to make up for the last 3 years. I want to take you to dinner and make you laugh. I want to know what makes you happy and what keeps you up at night. I want—" He paused, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. "I want you to look at me the way you're looking at me right now." "How am I looking at you?" "Like you might not hate me. Like you might even like me a little." "I might. A little." He smiled, and it transformed his face. "I'll take it." We left the restaurant and walked through the quiet streets. It was a cool night, and Adrian took off his jacket and draped it over my shoulders. It smelled like him, like expensive cologne and something uniquely Adrian. "I should get home," I said reluctantly. "Victoria will worry." "I'll get you a car." He pulled out his phone, but I stopped him. "Wait. I need to know something first. What happens now? Do we just pretend this never happened? Do we sneak around like teenagers?" "What are we doing, Adrian?" He looked at me for a long moment. "I don't know. I just know that I don't want to lose you again. We'll figure out the rest as we go. My mother will never accept this. I know. She'll think you're using me. I know that too. So what do? We be careful, we take it slow. And when the time is right, we tell her the truth." He cupped my face in his hands. "Emma, I'm not asking you to choose between me and your mother. I'm just asking you not to shut me out. Can you do that?" I should have said no. I should have walked away right then. But I was tired of being careful, tired of being alone, tired of always doing the right thing. "Yes," I whispered, "I can do that." He leaned down and kissed me, soft and gentle, and I felt something inside me crack open, something that had been locked away for 25 years. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark. "I'll call you tomorrow." "Okay." He got me a car, and I rode home in a daze, my fingers touching my lips, my mind spinning. What had I just done? What was I doing? I didn't know. But for the first time in my life, I didn't care. The next 3 weeks were the strangest of my life. During the day, I was Emma Ashford, heiress and dutiful daughter. I went to the office with Victoria, sat in on meetings, learned about the business. I smiled at board members and made small talk at charity events. I played the part I was supposed to play, but at night I was just Emma. I met Adrian at quiet restaurants, at his apartment, at a park where we could walk without being recognized. We talked for hours about everything and nothing. He told me about his dreams, his fears, his regrets. I told him about mine. We laughed and argued and slowly, carefully, fell in love. It was terrifying and exhilarating and completely impossible. But I couldn't stop. Victoria noticed something was different. "You seem happy," she said one morning over breakfast. "I'm glad. You've been so serious since you arrived. Guilt twisted in my stomach." "I'm just adjusting." "Well, whatever it is, keep doing it. It's good to see you smile." If only she knew what was making me smile. But secrets have a way of coming out. And ours came out in the worst possible way. It was a Thursday afternoon, and I was at the Ashford Global offices, sitting in on a board meeting. Victoria was presenting the quarterly earnings, and I was trying to pay attention, but my mind kept drifting to Adrian. We were supposed to meet that night, and I was already counting down the hours. Then Victoria pulled up a slide that made my blood run cold. "As you can see," she said, "Blackwell Industries has been making aggressive moves in the Asian market. They've acquired 3 companies in the last month, companies that we were also pursuing. It's clear that Adrian Blackwell has a source inside our organization. Someone is feeding him information about our strategies." The room erupted in angry murmurs. I sat frozen, my heart pounding. "Do we know who the leak is?" one of the board members asked. "Not yet, but I've hired a private investigator. We'll find them." Victoria's voice was cold. "And when we do, I'll make sure they never work in this industry again." The meeting continued, but I didn't hear another word. My mind was racing. Adrian had been asking me questions about the company, about Victoria's plans. I thought he was just making conversation, just trying to understand my new life. But what if he'd been using me? What if everything between us was a lie? No, I couldn't believe that. Adrian wouldn't do that. He'd told me what he felt was real. The doubt had planted itself in my mind, and it grew with every passing minute. That night, I met Adrian at his apartment. He greeted me with a kiss, but I pulled away. "What's wrong?" He asked immediately. "Are you using me?" He went still. "What?" "My mother thinks there's a leak in the company. Someone feeding you information about Ashford Global strategies. Is it me?" "Had you been using me this whole time?" "Emma, no. I would never. You've been asking me questions. About the company, about my mother's plans. I thought you were just interested, but what if you were gathering intelligence?" "I was interested because I care about you. Because I want to know about your life." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "Emma, I'm not using you, I swear." "Then how do you explain the acquisitions? How did you know which companies we were pursuing?" "I didn't get that information from you. I have my own sources, my own intelligence network. Yes, I've been aggressive in Asia, but that's because it's a growing market. It has nothing to do with you. How do I know that's true?" "Because I'm telling you it's true." His voice rose. "Emma, I know I've given you reasons not to trust me. I know I've made mistakes. But I am not using you. What we have is real." I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him. But I'd spent my whole life learning that people lie, that people leave, that trusting someone is just setting yourself up to be hurt. "I need time," I said. "I need to think." "Emma, please, I have to go." I left before he could stop me, tears streaming down my face. I went home and locked myself in my room, ignoring Victoria's concerned questions through the door. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what was real and what was a lie. Did Adrian love me? Or was I just a pawn in his war with my mother? By morning, I'd made a decision. I needed proof. One way or another, I needed to know the truth. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I went to Victoria's office and told her everything. She listened in silence, her face growing colder with every word. When I finished, she stood and walked to the window, her back to me. "I see," she said finally. "I'm sorry. I know I should have told you sooner. I know I betrayed your trust. Yes, you did." She turned to face me, and I flinched at the anger in her eyes. "Emma, do you have any idea what you've done? Adrian Blackwell is the enemy. He's been trying to destroy this company for years. And you've been feeding him information. I haven't. I swear, I never told him anything confidential. It doesn't matter what you think you told him. He's a master manipulator. He could have gotten information from you without you even realizing it." She shook her head. "I can't believe you were so naive." "I love him," I said quietly. "You don't love him. You love the idea of him. You love the attention he's giving you because you've never had it before. But Emma, that's not love, that's manipulation. You don't know him. I know him better than you do. I've been fighting him for 6 years. I know exactly what he's capable of." She came closer, her voice softening slightly. "Emma, I know this is hard. I know you want to believe that he cares about you, but you need to face reality. Adrian Blackwell doesn't love you. He is using you to get to me." "You're wrong," I whispered. "Am I?" "Then prove it. Cut off all contact with him. If he really loves you, he'll respect your decision. If he doesn't..." She left the sentence unfinished. I left her office feeling like I'd been hollowed out. Was Victoria right? Was I just a naive fool who'd fallen for a pretty face and some smooth words? I didn't know anymore. I didn't know anything. For 2 weeks, I didn't contact Adrian. I blocked his number, deleted his messages without reading them, and threw myself into learning the business. Victoria seemed pleased with my dedication, and I told myself I was doing the right thing. But I was miserable. I missed him. I missed his voice, his smile, the way he looked at me like I was the only person in the world. I missed feeling like I mattered to someone. Then, on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, everything changed. I was in Victoria's office reviewing contracts when her assistant rushed in, her face pale. "Mrs. Ashford, you need to see this." She turned on the television. A news anchor was speaking, her expression grave. "Breaking news in the business world. Adrian Blackwell, CEO of Blackwell Industries, has been arrested on charges of corporate espionage and fraud. According to sources, Blackwell allegedly stole proprietary information from rival companies, including Ashford Global, to gain an unfair advantage in the market. If convicted, he could face up to 20 years in prison." The screen showed footage of Adrian being led out of his office in handcuffs, his face blank, cameras flashing all around him. I couldn't breathe. No, this can't be happening. Victoria's expression was grim. "I'm sorry, Emma, I know this is hard to see. But this proves what I've been telling you. Adrian Blackwell is a criminal. You did this." I turned to her, horror dawning. "You set him up." "I did what was necessary to protect our company. He didn't steal anything from us. I never gave him any information." "Emma, the evidence is clear. The investigators found files on his computer, emails, financial records. He's guilty. Then the evidence was planted." I was shouting now, not caring. "You framed him because you wanted to destroy him. I did what any CEO would do when faced with corporate espionage. I protected my company and my shareholders. He's innocent. He's the enemy." Victoria's voice rose to match mine. "When are you going to understand that? Adrian Blackwell has been trying to destroy us for years. He seduced you to get information. He used you. And now he's paying the price. I don't believe you." "Then you're a fool." Victoria's voice was cold. "Emma, I've given you everything. A home, a family, a future. And you're throwing it all away for a man who doesn't love you. You don't know what he feels. I know that he's a liar and a criminal. And if you continue to defend him, you'll be choosing him over me, over your family, Is that really what you want? I looked at my mother, at this woman who'd searched for me for 25 years, who'd welcomed me into her home, who'd given me everything I'd never had. And I thought about Adrian, about the way he'd looked at me, about the vulnerability he'd shown me, about the love I'd felt growing between us. I need to see him, I said. Absolutely not. He deserves a chance to explain. He doesn't deserve anything from you. Maybe not, but I deserve the truth. And I'm going to get it, with or without your permission. I walked out of her office, ignoring her calls for me to come back. I went straight to the police station where Adrian was being held and demanded to see him. They tried to turn me away, but I pulled out the Ashford name like a weapon. And suddenly doors were opening. They led me to a small room with a table and 2 chairs. A few minutes later, Adrian was brought in. He looked terrible. His hair was disheveled, his suit wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. But when he saw me, his face lit up. "Emma, you came. I had to see you. I had to know the truth." He sat down across from me, his hands cuffed in front of him. "The truth is that I'm innocent. I didn't steal anything from Ashford Global or any other company. Someone planted evidence on my computer. My mother, probably. Or someone working for her. Emma, I know how this looks. I know you have every reason not to believe me. But I swear to you on everything I have that I never used you. What we had was real. I wanted to believe him. But I'd been lied to so many times in my life. How do I know you're telling the truth? You don't. You just have to trust me." He leaned forward, his eyes intense. "Emma, I love you. I've loved you since the day you refused to steal that file from me. Since the day you showed me that there are still people in this world with principles. I love your strength and your kindness and your stubborn refusal to be anything other than yourself. And I would never, ever use that love as a weapon." Tears were streaming down my face. "Adrian, I know your mother wants you to choose between us. I know she's given you everything you never had. And I'm not going to ask you to give that up for me. If you want to walk away, I'll understand. But I need you to know that what I feel for you is real. It's the most real thing in my life." I looked at him, at this man who'd been cold and distant and who'd learned to be vulnerable for me, at this man who was sitting in a jail cell facing 20 years in prison and was more concerned about my feelings than his own freedom. And I made my choice. "I believe you," I said. "And I'm going to prove you're innocent." His eyes widened. "Emma, no. You can't go against your mother. You'll lose everything. I don't care. You're innocent. And I'm not going to let you go to prison for something you didn't do. Emma, I love you too, Adrian. And I'm not walking away." I left the police station with a new determination. I didn't know how I was going to prove Adrian's innocence, but I was going to find a way, even if it meant going against Victoria, even if it meant losing everything I'd just gained. I went back to the Ashford estate and straight to Victoria's study. She was on the phone but hung up when she saw my face. "Emma, if you're here to argue about Adrian Blackwell, I'm here to tell you that I know you framed him, and I'm going to prove it." Victoria's expression hardened. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe, but it's my mistake to make." I took a deep breath. "I'm grateful for everything you've done for me. I'm grateful that you never stopped looking for me, that you welcomed me into your home, that you tried to give me the family I never had. But I can't be the daughter you want me to be if it means betraying the man I love." "He doesn't love you, Emma. He's using you. You keep saying that. But you're wrong, and I'm going to prove that too." I turned to leave, but Victoria's voice stopped me. "If you do this, if you choose him over me, there's no coming back. You'll lose your inheritance, your place in this family, everything." I looked back at her, at this woman who was my mother but who I barely knew. I lived without money and family my whole life. I can do it again. But I can't live with myself if I let an innocent man go to prison. "Then you're a fool." "Maybe. But I'm a fool who knows the difference between right and wrong." I left the estate that night with nothing but the clothes on my back and the $3,000 I still had in my old bank account. I went back to my tiny apartment, which I'd never given up, and I started investigating. It took me 3 weeks of digging through public records, talking to former Blackwell Industries employees, and calling in every favor I'd ever earned. But finally, I found it. Proof that someone had hacked into Adrian's computer and planted the evidence. And the hack had come from an IP address registered to Ashford Global. I took the evidence to Adrian's lawyer, a sharp woman named Jennifer Hayes who'd been fighting an uphill battle. She looked at what I'd found and smiled for the first time since I'd met her. This is it. This is what we need. Will it be enough to get the charges dropped? It should be, especially combined with the testimony you're willing to give. I'll testify to anything that helps. The hearing was set for the following week. I showed up in my old discount store suit, looking nothing like the polished heiress I'd been a month ago. Victoria was there, sitting in the front row with her lawyers, her face a mask of cold fury when she saw me. I took the stand and told the truth, all of it, about my relationship with Adrian, about the questions he'd asked and the answers I'd given, about how I'd never shared any confidential information, about the evidence I'd found proving the hack had come from Ashford Global. Victoria's lawyers tried to discredit me, tried to paint me as a lovesick fool who'd been manipulated. But Jennifer was brilliant, and the evidence spoke for itself. After 3 hours of testimony and arguments, the judge made his ruling. Based on the evidence presented, it's clear that the charges against Mr. Reeds, Blackwell, are based on planted evidence. The charges are hereby dismissed, and Mr. Blackwell is free to go. The relief that flooded through me was so intense I nearly collapsed. Adrian was free. He was innocent. I'd done it. Adrian found me outside the courthouse, and he pulled me into his arms, holding me so tightly I could barely breathe. "Thank you," he whispered into my hair. "Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for fighting for me. I love you," I said. "I couldn't let you go to prison for something you didn't do." He pulled back and cupped my face in his hands. "Emma Clarke, you are the most extraordinary person I've ever met, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving that I deserve you." "You already have." He kissed me, right there on the courthouse steps, in front of cameras and reporters and the whole world. And I kissed him back, not caring who saw, not caring what anyone thought. When we finally broke apart, I saw Victoria standing a few feet away, watching us. Her expression was unreadable. "Emma," she said quietly, "may I speak with you?" I looked at Adrian and he nodded. "I'll wait for you." I followed Victoria to a quiet corner, my heart pounding. I expected anger, accusations, threats, but when she spoke, her voice was tired. "You were right," she said, "about Adrian, about everything." I blinked in surprise. What? I had him framed. I planted the evidence because I wanted to destroy him, because I was so focused on winning our family's war that I couldn't see past my own hatred. She looked at me, and I saw tears in her eyes. And in the process, I almost lost you, my daughter, the person I've been searching for 25 years. "Victoria, let me finish, please." She took a deep breath. "I've spent so long being a CEO, being a warrior, that I forgot how to be a mother. I forgot that love isn't about control or protection or winning. It's about trust, and I didn't trust you to make your own choices. I'm sorry, Emma. I'm so sorry. I didn't know what to say. I'd expected a fight, not an apology." "I don't expect you to forgive me," Victoria continued. "I don't even expect you to come back. But I want you to know that I love you. I've always loved you. And if being with Adrian makes you happy, then I'll learn to accept it, even if it kills me." Despite everything, I laughed. "It might take some time. I have time. I've waited 25 years to be your mother. I can wait a little longer to do it right." She held out her hand, and after a moment, I took it. "I'd like that. But, Victoria, I need you to understand something. I love Adrian, and I'm not going to give him up. I know, and I'm not asking you to. I'm just asking for a chance to be part of your life. On your terms." "Okay, we can try." She smiled, and it was genuine. That's all I can ask for. Over the next 6 months, things slowly changed. Victoria and Adrian called a truce, agreeing to compete fairly in business but to keep their personal animosity out of it. It was awkward at first. family dinners where the tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. But gradually they learned to be civil, then cordial, then eventually almost friendly. I moved back into the Ashford estate, but I also spent time at Adrian's apartment. I learned the business working alongside Victoria, discovering that I had a talent for strategy and negotiation. I also discovered that I liked having a mother, even if our relationship was complicated. Adrian and I took things slow, learning each other without the pressure of secrecy. He taught me to sail and took me to Paris. I taught him to cook and made him watch romantic comedies. We fought and made up and slowly built something real and lasting. 1 year after the courthouse steps, Adrian took me back to the small Italian restaurant where we'd had our first date. We ate pasta and shared chocolate cake, and then he got down on one knee. "Emma Clarke Ashford," he said, pulling out a ring that sparkled in the candlelight. "You saved my life in more ways than one. You taught me how to feel, how to love, how to be human. And I want to spend the rest of my life making you as happy as you've made me. Will you marry me?" I looked at him, at this man who'd been cold and distant and who'd learned to be warm for me, at this man who'd been my boss and my enemy and who'd become my best friend and my love. "Yes," I said, tears streaming down my face. "Yes, I'll marry you." He slipped the ring on my finger and kissed me, and I felt complete in a way I never had before. I had a mother, a family, a home, but most importantly, I had someone who loved me for exactly who I was. Not Emma Clarke, the invisible secretary. Not Evelyn Ashford, the lost heiress. Just Emma. Just me. The wedding was 6 months later. A small ceremony at the Ashford estate with only close friends and family. Victoria walked me down the aisle, tears streaming down her face. Adrian waited at the altar, looking at me like I was the most precious thing in the world. We said our vows, promising to love and honor and cherish each other. And when the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, Adrian kissed me like he'd been waiting his whole life to do it. At the reception, Victoria gave a toast. "To my daughter," she said, raising her glass, "who taught me that love is stronger than hate, that forgiveness is stronger than revenge, and that family isn't just about blood. It's about choice. Emma, you chose to fight for what you believed in, even when it cost you everything. And in doing so, you gave me back something I thought I'd lost forever. A daughter, a family, a reason to be better. I love you, sweetheart. And Adrian, you take care of her, or you'll answer to me." Everyone laughed, and Adrian raised his own glass. "I promise. Though I have to say, Mrs. Ashford, you've raised quite a formidable woman. I'm not sure who should be more afraid, me or her." "Both of you should be afraid of me," I said, standing up. "Because I'm not the invisible secretary anymore. I'm not the lost heiress. I'm Ella Blackwell, and I'm going to change the world. With my husband by my side and my mother at my back. So watch out, everyone. We're just getting started." The room erupted in applause and laughter. And as I looked around at the people I loved, at the family I'd found and the life I'd built, I realized something. I'd spent my whole life feeling invisible, feeling like I didn't belong anywhere. But I'd been wrong. I'd always belonged. I just had to find the courage to claim my place in the world. And now that I had, I was never letting go. 5 years later, I stood in the boardroom of Ashford Blackwell Global, the company Adrian and I had created by merging our families' businesses. It had been a controversial decision, one that had shocked the business world. But it had also been brilliant. Together we were unstoppable. Victoria had retired, handing over the reins to me and Adrian. She spent her time traveling and spoiling her 2 grandchildren, twin girls named Victoria and James, after her and my father. I looked out at the board members, at the empire we'd built, and smiled. "Ladies and gentlemen, let's get to work." As the meeting began, I felt Adrian's hand slip into mine under the table. I squeezed it, and he squeezed back. A silent conversation, a promise, a reminder of everything we'd overcome to get here. I'd been invisible once. A secretary no one noticed, a foster child no one wanted, a lost daughter no one could find. But I wasn't invisible anymore. I was seen. I was loved. I was home. And that made all the difference.